Hello, Scorpio. There is a moment that comes without warning, when your own body refuses to let you continue in the same direction. When the weight of what you have carried for years becomes too much to hide. And for you, Scorpio, that moment is arriving now. Not with gentle whispers or subtle signs, but with a force that you can feel pressing in your chest, an intensity that sparks like electricity under your skin. An undeniable sensation that is neither anxiety nor excitement, but something deeper, something urgent, something that cannot be dismissed. This is not coincidence. It is not random. And it is not a fleeting mood. It is destiny pressing against the walls of your being, insisting that you stop diminishing yourself, that you stop swallowing the truths you have been born to express, that you stop living as though your power must remain hidden for the comfort of others. For too long you have accepted silence when your soul wanted to speak. You have compromised in situations that demanded honesty. You have allowed yourself to fit into containers that were never built for you. And every time you did, a part of you dimmed. A part of you lost its color. And although you continued forward, something essential inside of you knew that this was not sustainable. That inner knowing is what you are feeling now as pressure in your chest, as an undeniable awareness that you can no longer disguise your intensity. It is not nerves. It is not adrenaline. It is not even longing. It is the soul's demand for authenticity, for a life that reflects who you are rather than a shadow of who you think you are allowed to be. Scorpio, to you more than any other sign, understand transformation. If you understand what it means to die to an old self and emerge into a new form, if you understand that endings are not punishments but necessary passages, and that is exactly what you are facing now. This strong sensation is the threshold of a rebirth. It is not simply an emotional surge. It is a direct message that the time of pretending, of withholding, of accepting less is over. You may have believed that keeping yourself small was a way to avoid conflict or to protect others. But in truth, it has been a betrayal of your own path. And destiny will not let that continue any longer. The more you resist, the stronger the pressure will become. Because this is not something you can postpone indefinitely. You have always carried a depth that others find difficult to comprehend, an intensity that sometimes isolates you. Because not everyone is comfortable standing close to that level of truth. But Scorpio, your depth is not a flaw and it is not too much. It is exactly what makes you who you are. It is exactly what the world needs. And hiding it has cost you more than you realize. Every relationship where you have silenced your instincts, every conversation where you withheld your truth, every choice where you settled for less, has accumulated into the heaviness you now feel. This weight is not punishment. It is correction. A recalibration that demands you stop betraying yourself. And so the pressure you feel is not only a warning, it is also a kind of activation. It is your body and spirit flipping the switches you once turned off, awakening abilities you thought had been buried, reminding you that you know how to lead, that you know how to see beneath the surface, that you know how to confront what others avoid. You have been made to believe at times that these qualities were too much, that they made you difficult. But the truth is they are gifts. Your ability to sense what is unspoken, your unwillingness to accept lies, your courage to walk into darkness in search of truth. These are not burdens. They are the very qualities that make you irreplaceable. And right now, they are being reawakened because your next chapter requires them. This moment is not only personal, it is also collective. Scorpio energy is often misunderstood because it is both destructive and healing, both ending and beginning, both shadow and light. But that duality is the essence of transformation. What you are experiencing inside is also what the world around you is demanding: more honesty, more authenticity, more courage to release what no longer works. You cannot guide others into transformation if you refuse to step into it yourself. That is why the sensation is so strong. Because you are being called to embody what you know in theory, but have resisted in practice. Consider where you have felt invisible, where you have allowed others to define your worth, where you have accepted roles that never match the depth of your spirit. Those moments are not accidents. They are the accumulation of years of diminishing yourself so that others would not feel threatened. But Scorpio, there is something tragic in seeing someone born to transform and lead settle for the background, and destiny refuses to let that tragedy continue. This pressure in your chest is the breaking point, the inner revolt, the signal that the old strategies of survival are no longer enough. You might fear that stepping into your full presence will push people away, and it will, but only those who benefited from your silence. Only those who are comfortable with your dimmed version. The ones who are meant to remain will not be afraid of your intensity. They will recognize themselves in your courage. They will be grateful that you chose to stop hiding, because your authenticity will free them to embrace their own. That is how Scorpio leads, not by seeking attention, but by living truth so deeply that it awakens others. This feeling is also directional. If you notice it in your chest, it is about the relationships where you have betrayed yourself. If you feel it in your throat, it is about the words you have not spoken, the voice you have withheld. If it appears in your head, it is about the visions you have suppressed, the ideas you have been afraid to share. Wherever it shows up, pay attention. Your body is not lying to you. It is mapping exactly where the change must begin. The urgency of this moment cannot be ignored, because fate does not create infinite windows. The opportunities forming around you will not wait forever. The people ready to recognize your worth are open now, but they may not remain if you hesitate. This is why destiny sends such a strong physical signal. It is reminding you that your time is limited, that you cannot postpone the truth of who you are. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. The force you feel is not designed to harm you, but to strengthen you, to make it impossible for you to continue pretending. And once you step through, once you stop apologizing for your intensity, everything around you will shift. The relationships built on false dynamics will fall away. The opportunities aligned with your true essence will magnetize toward you. The energy you emit will attract those who are not afraid of your depth. It will not always be easy, but it will be real. And real is what you were born for. So the choice becomes clear. Scorpio, will you keep shrinking until destiny forces your hand through crisis? Or will you honor the signal now and step willingly into your fullness? The sensation you feel is not an enemy. It is your own soul knocking on the door you have locked, demanding to be let out. If you listen, if you allow it, if you take the risk to live as you are meant to, you will look back and wonder why you ever believed hiding was safer. You will see that the danger was never in being too much. The danger was in believing you were not enough. When destiny begins to scream in someone's chest, it is no longer the quiet whisper or the subtle sign that can be ignored. It becomes a visible truth, a pressure that will not allow anyone to keep hiding in small roles within their own story. And for Leo, that truth is the confirmation that you have let your greatness sleep for far too long, that you have handed over the place that always belonged to you in exchange for the approval of others, that you have chosen to watch from the sidelines when you were always meant to lead. And now every cell in your body is rising together to declare that the time of hiding has ended, that the flame of leadership, the light of confidence, and the magnificence that needs no one's permission have all been awakened once again. This activation is not like a passing moment of excitement that fades. It is not the short-lived joy of recognition. It is a profound turning point in the journey of the soul. The moment when you cannot return to who you once were, because everything that kept you in the shadows has become too heavy. Every supporting role you once thought was safe has turned into a prison. And the voice of destiny pounding in your heart no longer allows compromise. It feels like a door behind you has been locked forever. You cannot step back. You can only walk forward. Forward into the space where light belongs to you. Where your strength is no longer something to be hidden, but the very force the world has been waiting for. Along the way, you have learned how to lower your voice so that no one would call you arrogant. You have taught yourself to laugh quietly, to hide the sting of being underestimated. You have compromised to keep the peace. But each time you did, a piece of your soul lost its color. And now the loss has grown so vast that nothing except your truth can fill it. This activation is like the body, remembering what it always knew, that you were born to lead and not to follow. That you were born to stand at the center and not at the edge. That you were born to shine and not to give your light away. But this truth is not always easy to accept, because with the light rising, shadows will also appear. Relationships will shift. Some will break apart because they cannot stand next to the full version of you. And there will be people who feel unsettled because you no longer play the smaller role they had grown used to. This is the challenge destiny lays before you. Will you have the courage to keep moving even when certain doors close? Will you remain steady even when others are uncomfortable? Will you trust that what you lose outwardly will be replaced with deeper and more aligned connections? When the energy inside you is activated, it does not only move through your emotions, it touches your thoughts, your habits, your daily choices. You begin to notice that conversations where you once stayed silent now suffocate you. Jobs you once accepted for the sake of peace now weigh you down. Compliments that once seemed flattering now feel empty. This is how you know you have entered the stage where return is no longer possible. Because when a lion wakes, it can never again pretend to be a house cat. The crucial thing to remember is that this intense sensation is not meant to frighten you, but to show you that you are ready. Destiny does not hand you this burden before you have the strength. It gives it to you once you have lived enough, hurt enough, learned enough to transform every piece of it into power. So instead of questioning whether you can rise to meet it, remember that if you could not, the feeling would not be here. It is preparation. Confirmation. A message that the time has come to return to the place that was always yours. Look back at the years behind you and understand that the silence, the compromise, the lowering of yourself were not wasted. They taught you patience. They gave you empathy. They gave you humility. And now those lessons are not to keep you hidden, but to shape you when you stand fully visible so that you can lead without cruelty, shine without burning others, and stand as the central figure in your own life while still holding compassion. What you are feeling now is the beginning of a new cycle. And this cycle will ask you to review every moment when you settled for less, every time you concealed your truth, every space you forced yourself into, and to promise yourself you will not return there. The sensation is a flame, and if you feed it with your determination, it will light the way ahead. But if you try to smother it, it will only grow hotter. Because the soul will not accept starvation again. Soon you will see the changes, opportunities appearing where you never expect. New people entering your life, carrying the recognition you have longed for. Old doors closing in ways that at first scare you, but later reveal themselves as dead ends. All of this is the natural consequence of choosing to honor the activation, of finally refusing to stay small and beginning to live fully. This path is not easy, but it is necessary. It demands that you face the fear of rejection, the worry of being too much, the memory of being judged when you dared to rise before. Yet each time you stand in your truth, each time you allow your light a little more space, you move closer to the freedom you have always wanted. And one day you will look back and see that this intense feeling in your chest was the turning point that carried you out of the shadows, the moment that made sure you never had to live diminished again. For Scorpios born between October 23rd and November 1st, the intensity you are feeling is directly tied to the hidden gifts of your perception, your capacity to read beneath the surface, and your ability to transform silence into revelation, this group is being asked to stop using their depth only as protection and to start using it as a creative force. You are being called to take what you sense in shadows and turn it into something that inspires. To use your intuition not only to survive, but to guide and to heal. The activation in your body right now is pushing you to stop hiding your psychic abilities, your insight, your natural power to reveal truth, because the world is in need of the clarity that only you can bring. For Scorpios born between November 2nd and November 11th, the sensation that presses into your chest is not only about personal awakening, but about long-delayed recognition. You have spent years carrying out responsibilities, holding secrets, and supporting others from the background, often without acknowledgement. Now, destiny refuses to let that continue. This is your season to stop waiting for validation from people who may never be able to see your depth, and instead begin to claim your own worth openly. Recognition is no longer something to hope for. It is something to step into. The more you declare your own value, the more the external world will mirror it back to you. This is not arrogance. It is correction. Because too many times you have let others dictate the measure of your brilliance, and that pattern ends here. For Scorpios born between November 12th and November 22nd, the current warning is about courage. And not just any courage, but the courage to reveal yourself without disguise, to step out of the layers of secrecy and control that you have worn like armor. This group is being urged to take up space, to let themselves be seen in full power and vulnerability combined, to accept that real strength is not in hiding but in presence. The strong pressure you feel is destiny's way of demanding that you stand in the open, that you bring your passion and intensity into the light without apology. The transformation available to you now requires you to accept that some will fear your authenticity, but those who are meant to walk with you will be magnetized by it. Your courage to be visible is the key that unlocks every next chapter waiting ahead. The message does not end with warning alone, because what pulses inside you now is not only the demand for change, but also the quiet promise that if you dare to stop pretending to be smaller than you are, if you dare to release the layers of caution that have made you invisible, if you dare to trust the weight of your own presence, then the world around you will rearrange itself in ways that you cannot yet fully imagine. Opportunities will begin to surface where you once saw only closed doors. Relationships built on mutual depth will arrive to replace the connections that drained you, and recognition will begin to flow towards you not because you begged for it, but because the moment you honor your essence, the universe has no choice but to reflect it back. This sensation is the unmistakable evidence that you have reached the limit of compromise, that you cannot keep investing your energy in roles that diminish your soul, that the very fabric of your life is now being rewoven to match the magnitude of who you really are. And while the process may feel disruptive at first, it carries with it the promise of liberation. Because as the false layers fall away, you will find that what remains is not emptiness but spaciousness. Not loss, but alignment. Not isolation, but clarity about who truly belongs by your side. Scorpio, you are not being punished by this intensity. You are being freed. And the way freedom feels at first is often overwhelming because it dismantles the familiar patterns you once relied on. Even when those patterns suffocated you, but beneath the initial shock is the relief of breathing fully again after years of shallow air. What destiny is telling you is that the more you resist this awakening, the more uncomfortable it will become. But the moment you surrender, the moment you stop apologizing for the gravity of your presence, everything begins to flow differently. Doors that once seemed locked will yield. People who truly resonate with your frequency will enter with ease. The heavy weight of old entanglements will dissolve on its own. Not through endless struggle, but through the natural law that truth cannot be held down forever. And you will discover that much of what you thought was necessary to hold on to was in fact the very anchor preventing you from rising. You may feel the pressure most strongly in your chest. And if so, it is a sign that your heart is asking for honesty in your relationships, that the connections you have carried where you played small for the sake of peace can no longer continue, that the kind of intimacy you crave is impossible when you do not bring your full self. And destiny promises that when you stop hiding, the love that meets you will be deeper, richer, and more aligned than anything you have previously known. If you feel it in your throat, it is the demand for expression, the promise that your words, your truth, your ability to name what others fear to acknowledge will no longer bring punishment, but will instead draw respect. And that your voice, once released, will become a force that shifts the course of your path. If it rises in your head, it is about the visions you have suppressed, the ideas you buried because you feared no one would understand. And destiny is promising that when you finally allow them to live in the open, they will find the exact people and circumstances prepared to support them. Understand this, the promise does not mean that the journey will be free of loss, but that every loss will create space for something closer to your true self. That every ending will be followed by a beginning you could not see while you were still holding on to what had already expired. That the dismantling you fear is actually the preparation for alignment. You will find that the relationships that could not withstand your truth will quietly fall away. That the obligations that drained you will collapse under their own weight. That the spaces where you were never truly seen will simply stop calling you. And at first this may feel like abandonment, but soon it will become evident that it is protection. That life itself is clearing the stage so that you may stand in the center without distraction. The promise is also about recognition, but not in the shallow sense of applause or compliments. It is about the deeper recognition that comes when you finally honor yourself. Because once you take responsibility for seeing your own worth, the external world reflects it back almost as an afterthought. You will stop seeking scraps of approval from those unwilling to see you, and instead begin to feel the resonance of those who always could. You will stop exhausting yourself trying to convince others of your value and begin attracting those who recognize it instinctively. And you will learn that the real recognition is not given, it is claimed. And the promise of destiny is that once you claim it, the outer reflection follows naturally. There will be people who say you have changed, that you are different, that you are no longer the Scorpio they once knew. And you will be able to answer with honesty that you have not changed. You have simply stopped pretending, and that the person they thought they knew was never the full truth of you. It was only the version that was willing to dim itself so that others would not feel threatened. And as you speak these words, you will feel the relief of no longer carrying disguises, the relief of being seen and known without filter, the relief of stepping into a life where authenticity is the only currency. The promise extends into the realm of opportunities as well, because the universe cannot send you what belongs to your fullest self while you are still hiding in the fragments of a smaller one. Once you embrace this activation, projects that once seemed too ambitious will begin to feel possible. Dreams you abandoned will stir again with new energy. Pathways that once seemed blocked will show sudden openings. And each of these is the reward for your courage. Each of these is life's way of meeting your honesty with resources, allies, and chances that could never have appeared when you were still pretending. The truth is that the feeling in your chest, in your throat, in your head, is both a warning and a gift. It shakes you because it needs you to move. It unsettles you because comfort would keep you stagnant. It presses with urgency because the window of alignment is now. And what waits for you if you honor it is not only freedom but fulfillment. Not only recognition but belonging. Not only the end of false patterns but the beginning of a life lived without apology. Scorpio, destiny is promising you that if you walk through this threshold, the weight you have carried will no longer define you. The shadows you once hid within will no longer imprison you. And the silence you once endured will transform into a voice that cannot be ignored. So let the pressure remind you that you are alive. Let the intensity remind you that you are ready. Let the fear remind you that you are standing at the edge of something real. And above all, let the promise remind you that this is not the end, but the beginning, that what is falling away was never meant to remain, that what is arriving has been waiting for the moment you would finally make space, and when you choose not to shrink anymore, when you allow yourself to live as you were always meant to, you will see that the universe was never against you. It was only waiting for you to return to yourself, and that is the deepest promise of all. And so, Scorpio, as we close this message, remember that what you are feeling right now is not random, not coincidence, not some fleeting rush of emotion that will disappear tomorrow. It is the pulse of destiny running through your veins, the sound of your own soul asking you to rise, the weight of every moment you once hid, now pressing forward so that you can never again betray yourself in the same way. And while that may feel overwhelming, it is in truth a gift because it ensures you cannot go back to a life that kept you small. This is the moment where you decide whether you will keep apologizing for your intensity or finally honor it. Whether you will continue carrying the masks that weigh you down or release them to step into your full brilliance. Whether you will allow fear to dictate another chapter or let courage write the next one. And the truth is that the promise has already been given. Once you stop pretending, the world will rearrange itself in your favor. The relationships that can meet your depth will appear. The recognition you longed for will come naturally. The opportunities you once thought impossible will move closer as if magnetized to your energy. You do not need to beg for space anymore. You do not need to earn the right to exist as you are. You do not need to dim your light for anyone's comfort. Because the truth is that your presence itself is the medicine. Your honesty itself is the inspiration. Your courage itself is the spark that reminds others of their own courage. And every time you dare to stand in that truth, you not only free yourself, but you give silent permission to others to do the same. So as this chapter ends, let the intensity in your chest become your compass. Let the whisper that has become a roar guide your steps. Let the promise that lives in your body remind you that you are already more than enough. And as you walk into the days ahead, do so with the certainty that you are not just moving forward. You are returning home. Home to your own power. Home to your own truth. Home to the throne that has always been yours. And from this day forward, you will never again mistake yourself for less than magnificent.